Right after Kevin King graduated from high school, he and his best buddies jumped in a car and headed to Florida to become lifeguards. Did they do it because it sounded like a fun way to make some money for college? Perhaps they wanted to do something important and meaningful. Maybe they were just looking for a surefire way to meet girls in swimsuits. For whatever reason, they went back to Panama City every summer for 7 years. As you can imagine, they have some pretty good stories to tell. Their wives will tell you they've heard them all, over and over again. Those are not the stories we'll be sharing tonight. But as Kevin was struggling to breathe and desperately needing a lifesaver, it dawned on Nina to ask her husband something about those summers, something they never really talked about. "Did you ever save anyone's life on that beach?" she asked one day. "Oh yeah, I had to give CPR many times," he answered. "There are people alive today because I was there." So this is a story about the gift of air, first given and then received.
Air is the common thing between a lifeguard and a lung transplant.
It did seem ironic that a man who saved people's lives by being a lifeguard, by getting people and giving them CPR on the beach when they were drowning, that he was literally waiting for his lifeguard. He was waiting for his lifesaver to give him the breath of life.
Long before we saw David Hasselhoff running along the beach on TV, Kevin King had traded in his flotation devices and swim trunks for a wife, 2 sons, and a career in the real estate division of Valero. Life was good. Breathing was something that just happened. And until his mother was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, he had no idea what it was, or how bad it could be.
The prognosis is very, very poor. Unfortunately, there is no good medications to treat this condition. And once they are diagnosed, most of our patients end up dying between 3 to 5 years after the diagnosis with pulmonary fibrosis.
Before her death, Kevin's mother enrolled him in a genetic study related to pulmonary fibrosis. And because of that study, Kevin monitored his lungs very closely and was diagnosed with the disease very early on.
Also was significant how fast the progression of his disease was.
Slowly I started noticing on walking upstairs and things that actually had, like walking up hills. I started noticing the shortness of breath.
Within months, it was seriously impacting his life.
Sad part about it was there was really nothing, there was no medication or anything you could do about it short of a transplant. And the doctor said, you got to get really bad before that's even a consideration. It's like last resort kind of thing.
He was going through oxygen bottles at a rapid pace that was getting worse every week.
It got to where your whole life evolved around how much oxygen and where's it going to come from. It's an amazing change of mind where your oxygen becomes the most important thing in your daily life.
It also got to where, like to take a shower in the morning, he would have lines from 3 different tanks in the house going in to give him enough oxygen, just to have the strength to take a shower, and then he'd have to lay down. After taking a shower, he'd have to lay down for about 30 minutes.
He could hardly walk, so on the rare occasions when he left the house, the man who had always been active and into the outdoors used a wheelchair.
We knew that his only chance was to get a lung transplant.
He was approved and listed for transplant in December of 2007. Then the waiting began.
Your mind sets up that every call is the potential call, and that gets pretty annoying because the phone rings and everybody goes quiet.
They got the call on Thursday, March 20th, 2008, 4 days before Easter. A lung was coming from a young man who had died in a car crash. The worst day in another family's life was the first day of Kevin's new life.
You think about it a lot. I think about it every day.
The transplant operation went exactly as planned.
By the next day, we were talking to him and everything was looking good for him.
Good Friday was a good day. Nina and the boys went home and got a good night's rest. Kevin's night was not so good.
His oxygen levels start going down, his blood pressure start going down, and we start becoming really uncomfortable that something was happening.
And getting worse.
I was sitting in the corner of his room, and you try real hard not to fixate on the monitors, but I mean that's kind of your indication of how things are going. And as I kept sitting there looking, his heart rate just kept inching up every few minutes, and his blood pressure kept going down.
He started looking worse and worse and started developing a lot of the indicators that he was getting really critically ill. We had to put him back on the respirator, and then very quickly started using a lot of blood pressure medications just to support his life.
Dr. Angel would come out to talk to us, and he would tell us, he's stable right now, but not doing well. And he said every hour that we can keep him alive is one more hour that he's with us.
He spent the whole time here bedside, and it's one of those situations where actually I personally stay here more just being here for the family than for the patient, because there was very few things that we were able to do at that point.
It was minute to minute.
Despite all the medication, we were barely keeping him alive. Some of his organs were failing at that point, and we decided, okay, we had to rule out some different things, and that's when we called the cardiology team.
The cardiology team wanted to take him back to the operating room and open his chest.
The surgeon said, you basically need to prepare yourself for the probability that he's not going to make it.
From the bed to the OR was going to be a significant risk of losing him at that point.
You just have to have complete faith in the staff, the doctors, that you were put in this hospital at this time for a reason.
Ultimately, they decided to keep Kevin in the ICU and bring the cath team in to do the procedure at the bedside.
Which is not a very common situation, to have to do what we call a pericardiocentesis, or basically place a catheter next to the heart to drain all of that fluid. But once we got to do that, it was like a miracle.
And all of a sudden, these metal doors just bang open. And Dr. Angel walked in, and he was just standing, just tall and straight, and he was beaming. His face, he was just beaming. And he goes, "You would not believe it. It is like night and day." And that immediately after they drained this fluid from Kevin's heart, he goes, his blood pressure's gone up, his heart rate's gone down. It's wonderful. And that was the best.
After their Easter miracle, Kevin recovered quickly and was back at work in about a month. Life was good again. Then one July morning, he woke up to find his knee was swollen.
It was so huge I couldn't believe it. And so I called the nurse line, and they told me, "That's not good. You need to come to the emergency room right away."
They didn't know at the time how dangerous it was, but it got scary as soon as he arrived in the emergency center.
So they immediately put me on heparin and put me in the ICU, and didn't want me to move.
It was a blood clot from the dialysis that was required when his kidneys had stopped working.
The clot actually went to his new transplanted lung, and still he was able to go through that and very quickly also bounce back.
Kevin spent another 2 weeks in the hospital, but again he recovered well and went back to work. Life was good yet again. Then allergy season arrived. It was Labor Day weekend, and Kevin coughed.
And then a little later I bent over, and I kind of, when I bent over, I had something in my pocket or something that was going to fall out, and I went to grab it, and I had this crackle noise like Rice Krispies up in my chest, up in this area.
He called the transplant doctor on call.
And she says, "You got a leak somewhere in your lung." So I said, "Oh no, that doesn't sound good." So she says, "Yeah, you're going to have to come on in."
After another 2 or 3 days in the hospital, he went home and, of course, back to work. A couple of days later, it turned into pneumonia. It was really not good this time. He was back in the hospital.
During that 3 weeks, they had him in a completely knocked out for a full week, like in a medically induced coma.
Once again, there were more questions than answers.
He kept getting worse, and they kept having to bring in other consultants and hematologists and, you know, just all sorts of different consultants. And I mean, he was very sick.
But Kevin fought back again.
I think that it's his will and his faith and all the things that he has that keep him around, and obviously the support of his family.
In fact, just a few months later, Kevin came into Dr. Angel's clinic one day and asked him if he could go skiing.
Actually, I was very happy about it. I asked him if he's a good skier because I don't want him to fell and broke his bones or anything like that, but he wasn't concerned about it. But it's a compliment to what we do. We want to give these lives to these patients back, and when they push to the limit, because knowing that going with a single lung transplantation to high altitude skiing is going to be tough, he wanted to do it, and he did it, and he brought the pictures. That was a great day for us.
It was a great time for the King family, too. His oxygen tanks in his backpack definitely got noticed.
2 people at different times asked me, "Hey, where do you rent those at?"
They thought it was a ski
They
accessory.
thought it was a ski accessory.
Life is so very good for the Kings.
I have very clear memories of how bad I was, and getting to the point where I am now and how different it was from then, to me, is a real miracle.
Dr. Angel also knows something about miracles.
This is something that is so dramatic that you see that is somebody that dies, and before they take all the organs away, somebody following the wishes of the patient who is dying decides to give the organs. There is a miracle right there.
I look at the miracle of Kevin being able to see our older son graduate from high school. At this particular point, Kevin would be dead had it not been for his lung transplant.
And then instead of having another patient dying, they get the benefit of getting those organs. By itself is a miracle. And we see every day this situation when these patients, that is nothing that we can offer, and they get the transplant. And once we go through the operation and we have the miracle of having the operation, and they have all of these situations in which most of the patients don't survive, and still they go like Mr. King. Not just one, it's 3 times to major problems and survive all of those. I don't think that there is science or anything that can explain that. Definitely there's miracles in this situation.
I still remember that Easter morning calling our priest and telling him, you know, he's going to live. They found it, and he's going to live.
I think I was sleeping during that time.
Yeah, you were asleep then. My family's intact. And I couldn't wish for anything better.